Welcome to Mystara, where once again we're looking at immortality, the real reason why we love this setting so much. Everybody knows how to earn your spot in Pandius. Get a sponsor, do a bunch of quests, give them a bunch of tribute. But what if I told you that's not the only way? I have it on good authority that a handful of Immortals achieved divine status on their own terms. They did it without anyone else's help. No sponsor, no quests, no tribute. One minute they were mortal, and the next minute they were divine. Just like that. Want to know how? Stay tuned. I'm Mr. Welch, and here we stand. We're princes of the universe. To clarify what I mean by cheating, the immortal in question doesn't go through the trials that 90% of the other known immortals go through. They're still part of a sphere, even if they didn't have a sponsor. They achieve immortality and then go find some friends to hang out with. Usually. The ones that the new immortal find the most alike were the sphere the neophyte joins. Any sphere can have an immortal join without the trials. Most fall into the four traditional spheres, with only a single exception for entropy, and she's a huge exception. Enough clarification, let's get started. First out, you take out all the proto-immortals. That's not an accurate term, but it's the best description I could come up with. These are the oldest and most powerful of all the immortals, dating back to before the Great Barrier was fully complete. They are Hel, Ixion, Karatoko, Thanatos, Valerius, Odin, and Zugzul. They all claim to have no knowledge of their origins. They were just there when the Great Barrier was started. They might be lying, but there's no way of proving that. It's speculated that Hel and Odin were avatars of those gods that were trapped and achieved immortality on their own. But again, nobody's alive to confirm it. They might have struck a deal with the Old Ones for immortality in return for their support. That has happened. Again, we don't know. So you can decide their origins for yourself. Now on to the ones we do know about. Benikander is a walking continuity error. I don't know what's more common in this video, Winona Ryder or me discovering continuity errors. Officially, Benikander was the first engineer on the Beagle. When it crashed, he was in cryosleep waiting for rescue. He woke up when an insane crew member started sabotaging the cryopods. He killed the saboteur, discovered the engines were set to overload, and was turned into an immortal when the engine exploded and destroyed the Beagle. That's from Wrath of the Immortals. City of the God gives an entirely different timeline where the captain isn't in suspended animation and greets the PCs at the door if they roll well enough, even going so far as opening up formal relations with King Uther. In that book, the Beagle never exploded, and Blackmore built a civilization around the starship. In Wrath, Benikander was turned into an immortal when the engines detonated somehow, and the other immortals don't know of his existence. To fix the massive continuity problem, he controls the blast, getting him and the engines teleported away. The Beagle isn't destroyed, but Blackmore explodes 1,000 years later, per the official timeline. Benikander isn't sure of his condition or who the other immortals are. Since nobody knows he's immortal, he's not being worshipped, so how is he still around? Let's just skip him by. Fugit is covered in the Codex Immortalis, which might as well be canon. We need to have the Council of Pandius, where all the Mystara fans decide which fanworks are now Mystara canon. We've got Thorfinn's enhanced maps, there's Bruce Hurd's additions to Alphatia on his block, and so much more we could use to make a massive crossover event. But back to Fugit. He was from the temporal plane, where time energy was everywhere. During the time of the Carnifex, they opened a portal to his plane and drew in several members of his race. He was the last survivor of their experiments when he was contacted by the immortal Simurgh, who had discovered the Carnifex's plans. More on him later. They were going to use the temporal plane to invade the multiverse. Simurgh made a deal with Fugit. He could control where the first portal would open, but only if he was powerful enough. So he was granted immortality, right then and there. After the affair ended, Fugit redirected the Carnifex to their prison and joined the Immortals. Most of the time he's at odds with the other Immortals, as his mindset is still quite alien. Coronis was a counselor to the leader of Blackmore at the height of its power. He was an influential scientist and a chronomancer, and he could see the danger the Empire was putting itself in. He used his time magic to see the future of Blackmore, but could not convince the leaders of the Empire's inevitable fate. Instead, Coronis built a time machine and moved his family and friends 100 years into the future on another planet to recreate Blackmore, only without the fatal hubris that would be its doom. Later, he tried to build another time machine to return to the past and give himself a better time machine to save more people. Then Coronis went home and died from old age, only to awaken as an immortal immediately. After a while being immortal, he decided to use his advanced magic to build another time machine and give that to his younger self to rescue even more people. Only then did he discover that his immortal self was the one that gave his younger self the better machine, and the temporal paradox is what gave him immortality. If the paradox of that doesn't hurt your head, I didn't explain it well enough. Rad already has his own video. I'll summarize it here without repeating myself too much. He discovered the artifact that was the nucleus of spheres, experimented with it, discovered he could use its energy to transform his body into an immortal. He acquired the power needed, cast the spell, defeated the Celestial trying to stop him. Then he walked into Pandios, found a chair, and made himself at home. The end. Raphael is the third and last of the Blackmore-related Immortals on the list. He was a neural scientist in the final days of the Empire, working on a machine that could transmit thoughts or let you log your entire brain into a computer, just like Cyberpunk 2020. He was working on his newest brain transfer machine when Blackmore went supernova. His body was destroyed, but somehow his mind survived. He was trapped in a fugue plane trying to figure out what happened when he made contact with the minds of what would become the Shadow Elves, and the rest is history. I don't know how long you can go without followers before you fade away, but apparently there is a grace period for new Immortals. Simurgh might not be an Immortal, but what he is a long-lingering question for the Immortals. He's one of the oldest, if not the oldest. He's powerful, on par with the Hierarchs according to his fluff. According to his rules, he's only 18th level. He's a mystery to the other Immortals because he's always been at that power level. He doesn't gain levels, but he never loses power. He just is. He's friendly enough on his own terms, and has his own beliefs, but something about him feels off. He's got one concern. He's there to stop threats to the multiverse. Not Mystara, not the Immortals, but the entire multiverse. If something will end the universe, he's the one to stop it. It's a bit of hyper-specialization, but when you need somebody to prevent reality from unraveling, it's nice to know he's there. Some believe he's a servant of the Old Ones posing as an Immortal. There's no evidence of that, but he's different from the others. It's not like he's following the rules because he has to, but because doing so makes him look like a regular old Immortal, not an undercover servant of the enigmatic caretakers of reality. Tyche was born an Immortal. She's just that lucky. She's the patron of fortune, both good and ill, and if anyone was going to be created on the spot as an Immortal, it would be her. She was born with the creation of Mystara. When the Great Barrier began, she gained sentience. She didn't exist before it, but some of the magical energy in its creation somehow formed her. Unlike the Proto-Immortals, she doesn't shy away from her past. She remembers her origins and is willing to share them if asked. Her focus is on luck and chance, and that has kept her neutral since the beginning of the barrier. She enjoys the randomness, even if she can't participate in it. The Elemental Immortals, known as the Elemasters, were the first and foremost Immortals from the inner planes that were caught inside the Great Barrier. They are as old as the barrier. Without their help it wouldn't even exist. They bartered for their immortality, and the elemental energies they provided made its creation possible. They became deities and were left to rule their section of the inner planes in return. They have actual names, but most mortals can't even begin to comprehend how to say them. They're just known as the Elemaster of the relevant element. It makes sense, as the full name of the Elemaster of Earth sounds like a granite boulder rolling down a mountain for 2 hours. Fortunately, his nickname only takes 15 minutes. There can be only one Elemaster of a plane, so the 4 of them are loath to sponsor Immortals for fear that their proteges could replace them. Cursi was created by accident. She is forever tied to the immortal Chorus, the patron of peace, as he was responsible for her creation and ascension. Chorus was on his quest for immortality when he visited another plane of existence that supposedly could remove unwanted traits from those who could find it. He reached his destination, went to sleep, and woke up with a naked woman sleeping next to him. This was Cursi. She was all of his unwanted traits in physical form. Where he was stoic, she was fun-loving. He disavowed violence, she loved a good scrum. She was everything Chorus wasn't, but held a strange attraction to him. He left her to complete his quests, and she later followed him to force him to reunite with her. When he obtained immortality, so did she. She doesn't know how to use her powers correctly, she's unfamiliar with any other immortal, but she still wants to unite with Chorus. Until she can figure out how, she remains on the plane of her creation, gathering followers from the travelers that visit. Cursi doesn't know how to reunite with Chorus when she finds him, just that she has to. Luca is one of the most unusual of all the Immortals. She started out as a single-celled organism back at the beginning. She was soaked in magical energies, and as she divided and became more complicated, she gained sentience. She started asking questions she didn't have answers to about life and its purpose. She began on a quest to find those answers and discovered the use of magic in the process. Eventually she ascended, becoming one of the first Immortals in the proto-history. It's unknown how. It wasn't like there were other Immortals around sending giant sentient amoebas on quests. But now she's an Immortal, and one that still has the curiosity of her mortal life. Kiwatz didn't cheat his way into immortality so much as steal it. He was a brain collector obsessed with the concept of Immortals. He wanted to know everything about them, mainly to steal their powers. He began committing one atrocity after another, including devastating entire races until finally, an Immortal manifested to stop the mad creature. The immortal Oranos appeared to demand answers. It was a trap. Kiwatz locked the Immortal into a pocket dimension, specifically designed to sap the immortal energy, and transferred it into the brain collector. Soon Oranos was no more, and Kiwatz took its place among the Immortals. No one knows how he did it, or even who did it. Kiwatz avoids Immortals, more than happy to use his stolen power to send Nelthalgu across the multiverse to serve him. Lastly, there's Skuld. She is the last remaining of the three ancient immortals that were called the Norn, being the chaotic member of the trio. The other two mysteriously disappeared, leaving her alone, spouting out cryptic prophecies with a terrifying habit of coming true. She is older than even the proto-immortals. Skuld existed before the creation of Mystara. She had intimate knowledge about the creation of the multiverse that she would hint at before she stopped being coherent. She seemed to have been an immortal before they existed, before they could have even existed. The Norns represented all stages of life, with Skuld seeing into the future, to the end of all things. Her creation might have involved time travel, but nobody wants to ask her. Her answer would be nonsensical or maddening. Probably both. That concludes the immortals who cheated their way into divine status. There were quite a few, even taking out the ones with the excuse that they don't remember their mortal lives. Benekander's backstory overwrites the events of the City of Gods, which is strange considering the characters that free him could have actually been on that adventure. Some backstories were created entirely for the Codex Immortalis, but were comprehensive enough to use here. Other immortals like Simurgh or Skuld might not even be immortals, but equally powerful creatures posing as one. It's up to you to decide the veracity of their stories if you're running an immortal campaign, or just have the player characters hanging around the City of Immortals. Next up is a subject that turned out to be much more comprehensive than I thought: Mystara's coinage. Until then, remember, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.